Happy Friday. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope you're having a great start to your morning. Certain you did if you started with Will and Ramon. We're happy to have you for the next 3 hours. 615-737-1045. Jump on in. Pre-game, we got you. Titans play at home tomorrow. It's going to be very exciting. Of course, we will all be there. Well, actually, are you going to be at Nissan Stadium? What's your deal? Hello, by the way.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Okay. Are you going to be at the game?
I will be in the Titans radio studio tomorrow.
Okay. This is new for you, yeah?
I mean the Titans radio studio here in the building.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the other one. Anyway, we are going to talk a lot about the game throughout the course of today and basically progress reports for players that played a lot of snaps. Like, I want to know what I'm looking for. I'm going to tell you guys what I'm looking for from Malik Willis, Rashad Weaver, Dylan Radins, Nick Petit-Frere, a lot of different guys as we get through this next preseason game who we know clearly and obviously are going to play. Coach Mack is going to be here in about 15 minutes, and we'll go through some stuff that we learned at joint training camp practices and get Mack's kind of general observations ahead of what should be an interesting night, depending on how much Malik Willis plays in particular. You'll hear from Mike Vrabel on that very subject in just a little bit. But since we're talking preseason, I turned on the Bears and the Seahawks last night. I watched, about 10 snaps of the first drive, the field goal drive that Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears offense started their game with, and it washed over me the more that I watch him and the more that I see what he doesn't have around him. We have talked a lot about the Bears' issues, just generally. From roster construction, they seem to be poorly managed, just generally as a franchise. I guess I don't think that's one that like immediately pops into your mind unless you're somebody who pays close attention to NFC North football. Like, the Bears have kind of been inept. And when I watch Justin Fields last night, it's one of those players who I'm just prepared for a full season of, get him out of here. I'm so tired of watching him be failed around him.
Well, remember what Trevor Sikkema said to us the other day? He was talking about, I kind of like the Bears' long-term plan and the direction they might be headed in, but there's a ticking clock with Justin Fields.
And you can look at their draft, and I understand why he feels that way. And Matt Eberflus is well regarded as an NFL coordinator, the former Colts defensive coordinator, now Bears head coach. So maybe they'll have better luck than, we're not that far removed from who was the Canadian football coach that they brought in for a couple of years that was supposed to like completely change the game for them, and he was terrible. Mark Trestman?
Trestman, yeah.
They have had so many weird hires and interesting decisions that I look at him, it's like Trevor Lawrence. Like, that's the most fun of the preseason for me, is seeing how much further, if at all, the younger guys are coming along, because that's who you're getting the biggest sample size of. So when I'm watching guys like Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, I want them to succeed because I want to be able to enjoy what we've seen them do throughout the course of their college careers, but not yet as pros. And I just feel like that's one where, again, there hasn't been enough, because Roquan Smith they showed the weird sideline shots of him because he's holding out, and apparently, according to the broadcast, because it was the former Monday Night Football crew, not this season's Monday Night Football crew, but last season's Monday Night Football crew, talking about this. Apparently, he's been a model citizen. But, to lose Roquan Smith and just to have that around your team right now, that's no good. Tevin Jenkins, their highly touted offensive line selection from a couple of years ago, who we talked about a great deal heading into that draft because the Titans needed offensive line help at the time, and may still at this point. But Tevin Jenkins is actively wasn't talking to his coaching staff for a while. He was causing him. Have you seen any of the reports around this? It's just been toxic early, and that can't be good to surround a young quarterback with. And that's why I think that Malik Willis is in such a good spot here. Because I watch these guys, and I hate it for them. I hate watch Jags and Bears. And, who is the best rookie quarterback out of that class so far? Is it Mac Jones?
Well, as far as rookie year performance,
I'm
yes.
just saying, like, who do you know to be a competent NFL quarterback of the 5 first-round draft picks a year ago?
I don't know, but I'm confident in Trevor Lawrence being a competent NFL quarterback.
I was talking to Greg about this, Cosell, on like before the podcast started. We just kind of riffing before we got rolling on the podcast, and Greg was like, yeah, there's some stuff there that he's just he's not seeing it
On Lawrence?
the way that he needs to, and that's just in a preseason game. So I'm skeptical because, I mean, you got to think, a year worth of bad habits for a dude, that's not just something that changes as soon as the coaching staff does.
Oh, it sets him back. Absolutely.
Right? So when I look at the situation for Malik here, and for as just so damn thirsty as some of you are to see this guy be the starting quarterback for the Titans, I understand. Like, I get it. But it's nonsense right now. But it's why I look at him and I'm like, oh, he may have a better chance to succeed than a good percentage of first-round quarterbacks, because these dudes have to play for probably bad teams right out of the gate, and they're still carrying some of the bad habits that they started with their rookie year.
Like Justin Fields.
Like Justin Fields.
A couple Titans legends in action last night.
Oh.
Second and goal. Evans straight up the middle. Touchdown, Bears. It's a nice, tough run by Darrington Evans, who really has a lot of talent out of App State, drafted by the Tennessee Titans a couple of years ago and has battled injuries throughout his career. But he is an electric running back who, when he is healthy and he is on, he is a guy that can rip big runs. He's good in the return game.
He had a touchdown last night. Darrington Evans, Titans legend. Angelo Blackson, Titans legend. Tajay Sharp, Titans legend.
Kari Blossingame.
Did Blossingame play?
I do not know if he
I
played,
didn't see Kari get.
but he is a member of the Bears roster.
That's right. And Dane Cruikshank, who again is hurt.
Yeah, so the Bears have like as many former Titans as the Falcons do. They just don't have a former Titans coach leading the way.
It's like, we talked about this, I think, at some point maybe earlier in the week, like Andy Dalton is a Saint, and you just look around and you're like, what? That does not compute. Like,
When did that happen?
It makes me laugh every time. It's honestly it's the only thing that keeps me engaged in the preseason, is just these random appearances from names that you knew from, 10, 15 years ago, but they're like several stops later down the line.
Yeah, did I see a Nate Peterman appearance yesterday?
Oh my God, did you? I didn't watch that long. How long did you watch? Nathan Peterman?
Yeah, Peterman played in the second half. He is a Bear.
Okay, because I turned off. I stopped after Trevor Siemian.
I just had it on. I was doing some high school football prep, and it was on. But
yeah.
Yes, Nathan Peterman was fully in action. Man, props to that guy.
The Peter Man, he's out here doing it.
Yep.
I mean, listen, I remember, it's one of my most poignant NFL memories of like horrendous quarterback performances is the 5 interceptions he threw. Was he a Bills quarterback against the Chargers?
He was a Bills quarterback.
It was like, but it was in a half. It was in a half that he did.
You don't remember his 2013 performance against Florida for Tennessee.
I wasn't paying as close attention then, no. So
Goodness.
I don't. But didn't he upset Clemson?
Oh, he had a great career at Pitt.
Right?
Jim Chaney was his play caller. He got drafted, yeah. I mean, he was a 4-star prospect.
He's been in the league. Like, it's coming up on a little while. Like, John Gruden loved him. And, not the problematic parts about John Gruden, but the quarterback coach part of John Gruden seemed to really think that there was value there. He's on the Raiders for a couple of years as the backup.
I really want to pull up his stats against Florida.
Okay, why? Because we've got a lot of SEC stuff to do today. We've got 2 SEC. We had to do double time because we're getting so close to the college football season, and we haven't gone nearly fast enough with our SEC stats of the day on Friday. So 2 schools in the SEC that we will get you information on today. What do you have, Peterman stats?
Okay, you ready for this?
Okay.
Nathan Peterman against Florida.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Is this better to do next, or do you? Oh, we have Mac.
You got Mac next.
Okay.
Peterman against Florida, 2013 for Tennessee, 4 of 11, 5 yards, 2 picks. How do you complete 4 passes for 5 yards total?
No.
And it wasn't. I mean, he wasn't ready. He was not ready to start that game in the swamp. But yeah, he was set up for failure.
So wait, 13 is that Dooley?
No. That's year 1 of Butch. Yeah, Peterman got starts before Josh Dobbs did. They were still trying to redshirt Dobbs.
Oh my God. Walk me through your feelings on that day.
I watched that game at a B-dubs.
It's that has to be some kind of a poll. Like, is there anything good that starts with the sentence I watched? No, I don't know. I watched that game at a B-dubs.
The B-dubs that I worked at in Birmingham in high school.
Oh, slinging wings?
Loved working there.
Okay.
Great job. But yeah, terrible performance.
So were you working? Were you on the clock?
No. I was out. This was my post B-dubs career, I believe.
Okay. I was just curious to know if you were like just hanging around the local B-dubs after work. Like you get off work, you're slamming a couple cold ones.
I was tailgating. They used to have those ads.
Tailgating.
Yeah, come tailgating at B-dubs.
That's right. The tailgating ads, not nearly as successful as the extra time ads where you hit the button. Anyway, 615-737-1045. If you want to jump in, let's talk some preseason football with Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio. That's next.
The Buck Rising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
We most certainly are. Our next guest, Coach Dave McGinnis, he's presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans. For 75 years, Tennesseans have been relying on Farm Bureau Health Plans for their health care coverage. Why? Better rates, better coverage, and better service. Farm Bureau Health Plans is where you go. Mac, how we living on this Friday, brother?
But good morning. Everything's good. I'm up here at the facility getting ready to do a production meeting with the head coach, and so that's why we're on earlier than normal, but good to be on with you.
I would say that, your production meeting with Mike would take precedent. We are happy to adapt to your schedule that way, Mac.
Very good.
Preseason games, I just felt, Mac, and we talked about this, like they got out of it last week what they needed to as far as players that you're trying to watch. And so as we kind of work our way through this week of joint training camp practices, did you see the kind of competition that you expected between these two squads? I don't know how much time you spent on offense versus defense specifically, or splitting the fields, because I know it was kind of, it's hard to see everything. But kind of how did you approach your viewing habits for this week's practices?
Yeah, Buck, first day I spent specifically on the ground, with the offense. And the second day, Jeff Fisher was here, that Mike Vrabel and John Robinson were very gracious, to invite him here. So he and I were upstairs on the third level. First of all, he recorded an OTP with Mike Keith on the second level, and then I was giving him a tour before practice started. We went up to the third level with the first responders and the firefighters, and it was great up there. But then when everything kind of settled down, we were watching up there where you can see, all three fields, and so we concentrated a lot early. He and I did, just looking at the defense over there. He wanted to put his eyes on, Caleb Farley a little bit. And then, when they came together, of course, clearly on the first field, we saw a lot of it. And, we having been together, he and I, for a long time, we're probably, 6 or 8 of these joint practices. We've been together. He was very impressed with just the organization of it and the way it worked. And, as two former head coaches looking at it, you understand what the developmental process is when these kind of things happen, So for myself particularly, the first day, I was down there watching the offense, and then watching Caleb Farley. I didn't see him the first day. Of course, the reports were that he had some issues the first day with some routes, and then the second day, yesterday, he looked really good to me. But look, myself and Fish too, when we were talking, we're very, very cognizant of and very respectful of the coaching aspect that goes into developing players.
Right.
And the worst thing you can do as a coach is to be an IE or an instant evaluator. You've got to give these guys time to develop, to take coaching, and because they're not all a finished product. They never are. When I first started coaching in this league with Mike Ditka, he told me one time, because I was young and I was very, very eager. And, I made a comment once, this guy just doesn't really look like he can play here, Coach. He said, you know what? It's not your job this early to say that. It's your job to help him develop. And that stuck with me for a long time.
That's such sage advice, Mac, and something that I think it's good to kind of keep in the back of everybody's mind as they go through watching these players right now. Because I think it's very easy to look at preseason and kind of make drastic assessments just generally. Everybody has the ability to react, and certainly with social media that becomes a little louder with just the first thing that they see, without kind of keeping in mind, they are working with them through these things to try and figure out how much more of a finished NFL product they can make each individual at their respective jobs, and maybe provide them not an opportunity with the team that they're currently on, but for the opportunity to put good tape on film for their next team who may have an open spot on the practice squad or may need a body as the season wears on and injuries start to take place, as they inevitably do. I think people lose sight of that really quickly.
Well, that's very well put, and that's all part of it. And it's not just with your rookie players, it's with players throughout the development, time in their career. And so, so you ask me what I am looking for. Well, again, as I say, I'm very respectful of the coaching aspect of it and the players taken to the coaching. It's a developmental process that you go through. And so, people that make, immediate evaluations saying this guy can't play, this guy can't play, that they haven't been in the business. And so you put that very well.
So, Mac, I think a good kind of example of that is Dylan Radins right now, because he's obviously in a competition for the right tackle spot. There's still a lot of there's a lot of progress that he's made, but with both of them, still a lot of work and refinement that needs to happen. And I wonder what you've kind of seen from the two of them, where they're rotating them in as the starter one day to the next with the first team offense when they do those 11-on-11 drills with Tampa.
I think the rotation kind of tells you, and I said early on, before Nicholas Petit-Frere really started to get in sync, your expectations would have been for Dylan Radins to be ahead in this. Now you can see that Nicholas Petit-Frere, clearly with the rotations they're giving him, they want to give both of these guys a chance, and that's important. To me, it's really not that important as to who the starter is. Both of these guys are going to be on the team, right? But they want to play the guy that is going to give them the best chance to be able to be successful. And so I really believe, that is a great point in both of these players. You've got a second-year player that really didn't, play very much his first year, and because of a lot of reasons, basically because, of where he came from. He only had one game. Well, we know all the background history. Then Nicholas Petit-Frere, is a real physical talent, but absolutely was available in the third round, for several reasons. But both of them, I think you've seen marked improvement. Keith Carter and Mike Sullivan, I do know this, having talked with them and, the years I've been here with them and watching them coach, they're very technique concentric coaches. And so that's very, very important. And there's so much technique that goes into what goes on with playing, that position, not only within yourself, but within what you are going to see when you're competing against the top level of defenders in this league. So I think both of them are doing a nice job. Whichever one they pick, I'm going to be extremely happy with, but I know that it's going to be made with all of the things that go into saying who is going to give us the best chance, in the first week against the Giants, and then consistently as we go through the season, who gives us the best chance to be able to be successful offensively, because in the end, that's what we're all looking for.
Coach Dave McGinnis, Titans Radio, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Coverage starts at 5 p.m. Well, coverage starts at 3 p.m. because we've got you for the Lee Company countdown to kickoff, but the real deal, Titans countdown at 5 p.m. and, of course, kickoff at 6 from Nissan Stadium with Mike, Mac, the whole crew. Going to be fun to have a Titans home game. Mac, kind of sticking with the technique of the offensive line. What I was talking to Cosell about a couple of days ago is Greg didn't notice Petit-Frere kind of lunging when he's run blocking in a way that they saw somewhat on tape in college. Kind of keeping his balance or just being a little more controlled rather than kind of overextending himself and putting him in maybe a compromising position. Is that something that you observed?
Well, I watched, as I said, the first day I watched, and Ron Slade was with me, and he really is wanting to learn about, what's going on out there in the National Football League. He could take us all to school on what's going on in professional basketball. But in this, I said, well, watch the right tackles. And then I kind of, related it to him, playing down in the post. It's being able to keep, your body in a position, an athletic position, but you've got to be able to get a solid base. And you don't have a solid base, when you bend at the waist, no matter what that entails. And so all of those things, again, go into being able to have that type of solid base and depending on what you are seeing from your opponent, defensively. And here's the other thing, is to get confident enough in the technique that when things start getting really hot, you don't revert back to your old ways. That's the thing that rookies have to fight really, really hard, Buck, is things that have worked for them, that have gotten them to this level, but things that will be a detriment if they continue to do it at this level because of the uptick in competition, so that they don't revert back to their old ways. And so that's the coaching aspect of it, and it's also incumbent upon the player to be able to trust those techniques that he is being taught and that he learns. And as soon as they reach that threshold as to where that, the old axiom where people will always say, or you hear players say, the game has started to slow down for me.
Sure.
That's part of it.
So I think that's kind of, the obvious kind of place to look at for Malik too is what we see kind of slow down for him, or maybe not in second preseason action? Because we talked to Vrabel yesterday, Mac. I don't know if you heard any of it, but the idea that they're starting to give Malik more reps just because they need to get him comfortable in the system. They said that they had a conversation with Logan Woodside. He obviously understands. So fair to say that Malik will again play a good portion of Saturday's game. But for him, like, I've been trying to kind of get it in people's heads that I don't care what his box score looks like necessarily. I just want to see what he is trying to do and if it's better or more in line with what the coaching was trying to get him to do in week one. Like, how much of that progress has actually been made in a week's time?
I think that's a fair assessment. The box score really doesn't matter. What you do want to see, and clearly, look, we know that he's got exceptional, physical skills, and that's what they're trying to do, and I know exactly what they're trying to do. And Mike Vrabel's very honest with both of those guys, but Malik has got to learn how to manipulate the cylinder, when they are throwing, and be able to, in this league, you've got to throw your receivers open, and you've got to understand that just because the window's tight doesn't mean you can't throw it, and the scheme will not allow you to hit somebody and let them run with it, because he's always been able, in where he was playing, and I'm sure throughout his whole football playing career until he got to the National Football League, he's been able to forfeit to his natural gifts, which is, if nothing's not open, stick your foot in the ground and outrun everybody. Well, those windows get much smaller in the National Football League, and you're not ever going to be a complete quarterback in this league until you learn how to operate the cylinder, whether it's play action or whether it's, or whether it's a 3 or a 5 step drop. And so all of those types of things, marrying the bottom part of your body, to what your head sees, all of that stuff from quarterback, it's a big, big jump. And so the only way to see him doing that, you've seen all of the 2-minute reps that they've given him out here when it's live, regardless of whether we're working against somebody else or they're working against themselves. That's what he has to see over and over and over again. And so it's a developmental process. I mean, it really is. I mean, I had 2 quarterbacks when I was coaching, Jake Plummer and then Josh McCown, who were runners, who would run, who would forfeit to the run. And we had to work on their ability to be able to hang in there a little bit, and both with arm talents, just let it go. And they both ended up having nice careers. It's a learning process. And so that's what he's going through right now.
Coach Dave McGinnis, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans, as is all of the great Titans radio coverage, the Titans Amy and Coach Mac podcast, the official Titans podcast, a new one available yesterday with, as Coach Mac mentioned, Jeff Fisher. And Mike told me that Diana Rossini, our friend Diana, is on that podcast too, so you should go check it out. For Caleb Farley, Mac, there was not a ton of snaps for him, but he did get some good work in the first half last week. What is kind of the next progression, the next step in the progression for him that you're going to be kind of monitoring throughout the course of this game, and then after you go back to review?
Well, let's go back and review, where Caleb Farley came from. I mean, let's remember that he was a receiver when he went to Virginia Tech. And then he moved to corner, and then you had COVID, and then he had the injury. So everything that he is learning, he's learning at an accelerated pace in this league. I've seen great improvement from him. But the one thing I think, Buck, even the uninitiated eye can see as to when he's been out there, this is an elite talent. This is a guy that's got length and that can be able to make up for a lot of things with his length, but he also can transition. But he has still a lot to learn with the nuances of playing back there, and the only way he is going to be able to learn is to do it. That's why these reps are so important for him. And then you've got to be thrown out there into the fire and say, here you are, let's go take all of this instruction that you've gotten and trust it. You've got to be able to trust it. And that it goes back to what I was saying. When young players are put into this league, especially in visible positions like a corner is, they've got to learn to trust the elite techniques that they are going to have to use to be able to compete against the receivers and the schemes they're going to see in this league. I think he's making progress in that. And so that's what I want to see him continue to do. Yesterday's practice, I didn't see him the first day, but people said that he was having a couple of issues. Mm-hmm. Well, he seemed to have overcome them yesterday. When I was watching him, he looked to be pretty good in that. But it's a daily process. The thing that's important to remember, Buck, and I was told this very early in my career as a coach, every day in this league is an interview. So every day in this league, in the building and on the field, is an interview for these players. And so that's important to remember.
And to his credit, I haven't seen him have like back-to-back days where there have been issues. Like it seems to have, at least in making corrections, like he seems to rebound very well, which obviously is important at that position because you know at some point as a corner you're going to get beat. You're just going to have to make the next play.
Absolutely, that's very true. And I've had a Hall of Fame corner in Aeneas Williams, and he was beaten too, but he wasn't. He didn't let the first beat take him down for the next 3 or 4.
I don't see Roger McCreary get beat a lot out there, Mac. I'm really excited to watch him in an extended sample size on Saturday. How about you?
Sure. I mean, I like the player. I like the player vetting him coming out of the draft. I mean, I've said before, I think he was a very sticky player when you watched him in the Southeastern Conference. He's got great ability to be able to hip up to receivers, and he doesn't seem to be a guy that panics a whole lot. You can kind of tell the way guys that are playing back there carry themselves, and so he just needs reps. He needs reps to see him. And it's really unfair to put a lot of lofty expectations on any rookie. But even, Shane Bowen said he doesn't carry himself like a rookie, and I agree with that.
That's what I'm saying. Like the coaching staff even, it's normally us that get ahead of ourselves, don't keep our powder dry. But when Shane Bowen says something like that, it definitely makes you pick up and notice. Mac, what did Jeff Fisher think of the practice facility yesterday? It's got to look a lot different since – well, one of those, I mean, I know he's been back recently, but it's got to look a lot different than when he was here.
Well, he got more of a look at it, on the second and the third. He's thoroughly impressed, just like Wild Mac. And he could, I mean, first of all, he's very, very, gave a lot of praise to Amy Adams-Strunk, for what she's done. And then he's a big fan of John Robinson and Mike Vrabel with what they've done with his team as far as, I mean, when you're a former head coach like we both are, you appreciate, people that are developing teams, and you can tell. I mean, when you've been in the business as long as he and I have, you can tell good from bad pretty quick when you look at it. He was very impressed, and as I said, very, very much a lot of praise for Amy Adams-Strunk and for the Titans organization. This is a beautiful facility, and he was just like, "Wow, this is it." He said, "This is the National Football League," and he said, "It's wonderful." And as I said, he really is a big fan of Amy Adams-Strunk, and also he was very appreciative of Mike and John, inviting him yesterday. He thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a good day, really.
Well, I'm glad that he got to enjoy it. I'm glad you got to enjoy it with him. I'm sure that was a great time with y'all. You look like every time I saw both of you, Max, somebody different was coming up to chop it up with you. I'm sure a lot of people enjoyed the time that you guys got to spend together yesterday.
That's a great part of this now. Both he and I, are not coaching anymore. But when you're a head coach, you don't have time to do that. With the people that appreciate what you do. Now I do, and now he does. And and plus, I mean, he will always be someone that is highly respected in this community, and in this organization. Clearly, he's in the Ring of Honor, and so rightfully so. And as I said, I just appreciate being able to interact with all of the people. Now it was great up there with the first responders yesterday. Those types of things now at this point in my career with what I do are important to me. Because now I get to interact with the people. When you're a head coach, you really don't get to do that because there's other things that you are doing. Now I'm all into it.
Max, a man of the people. There's no question. Pre-game at 3 p.m., Titans countdown at 5 p.m. Mac and Mike have you covered for kickoff at 6 p.m. between the Titans and the Buccaneers at Nissan Stadium tomorrow. Thank you as always, buddy. I'll see you in the booth tomorrow. I'm excited.
Absolutely, Buck. See you in the booth. Thank you.
That's the great Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio with us on 104.5 The Zone. Nothing makes me happier than Mac on a Friday. Like, how did we win the show roulette that way? Like, we really got a good. Like, you want Mac after a game too. I get that, but Mac on a Friday, it's good energy. I'm going to be in a good mood for the rest of the show today.
Nothing like it.
Lucky for you. 615-737-1045.
Not yes. Not yes. Hell yes.
Okay. We can all agree. Hell yes. Except if it's a Darrington Evans touchdown run for the Bears. We will do the first of 2 SEC stats of the day next. Welcome back. We got SEC stats of the day. We got a couple for you. Look at you. Did you get crazy last night? You getting excited? All kinds of SEC stats of the day coming out.
Oh, I got crazy last night.
While watching Justin Fields get massacred and doing high school football
Oh, yeah,
prep.
it was nuts.
First 104.5 The Zone high school game of the week, though, coming up tonight. Will Bowling, Lucas Panzica on the call. I know there's been a promo that played at some point since we've been on the air today already for it, but would you like the opportunity to plug yourself?
Mount Juliet at Gallatin, long-standing rivalry. That rivalry has been going on for about 4 decades in Middle Tennessee, 2 of the oldest programs in Middle Tennessee, and looking forward to it. We'll be at Gallatin High School, and then after the final whistle, Friday Night Finals goes until 11 p.m. We'll recap all the Week 1 action.
Coverage starts at
6:45 pregame, 7 p.m. kickoff.
Excellent work by you. Very good. And then we will have the TN High School Hero of the Week back by the time Tuesday rolls around on the radio show. So that'll be a great time. We always enjoy.
There were games happening last night.
Oh, high school games?
Yeah, Cane Ridge and Pearl Cone were in action, a couple of other programs.
So when you're, well, I guess it would be hard for you to go to another game because you're working on these Friday night games. But like, do you go to other games when you have the opportunity? How do you do this with high school football?
If I get the chance to do that, I certainly will this year because there's going to be a lot of good Thursday games this season, more than usual.
Why don't you text me when you do that? Because I would like to go to a high school football game, which is something that we will probably look out of place at or problematic, just people with no children attending high school football games. But there's great competition to be seen, and I would very much enjoy the opportunity to go. Okay, let's start with the first SEC stat of the day as we go in alphabetical order, which would first up lead us with the Missouri Tigers.
The Missouri Tigers. Yes, today is a twofer. We're going to go with Mizzou for now. Eli Drinkwitz going into year 3. The SEC stat of the day is 6.56. That is the number of yards per play that Missouri's defense allowed in 2021. 6.56 yards per play.
Per play?
Per play.
Ugh.
That was good for 105th in the country. Now, we all remember how they fired their defensive line coach midseason, Jeremy Pruitt style. Maybe not mid-game, but midseason after an atrocious performance against Tennessee. Defensive coordinator Steve Wilkes, a former NFL head coach, he's gone. And the onus is now on Blake Baker. He was LSU's linebackers coach last season, spent a couple years as the DC at Miami before that. They returned defensive end Isaiah McGuire, 14 TFLs. But really where I'm interested to watch this team is on offense. They lose running back Tyler Beatty. Quarterback Connor Basilick is now an Indiana Hoosier. How excited are you?
Hype.
Well, Brady Cook.
Ask me if I knew that before just that
There's
second.
not a chance. Brady Cook.
Who's the head coach? Is it still Tom Allen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Brady Cook is the starter at Mizzou. He was named the starter just a few days ago, and he now has former 4-star Sam Horn behind him. There's a bunch of quarterbacks in that room. He also has Luther Burden to throw to, a 5-star wide receiver, a freshman who's going to get a lot of looks. This team is going to sling it around, but still just really hard to picture Missouri taking a giant step forward. Like, it feels like a bowl game is still the goal for this program this season. I feel like treading water is the best way to put it, right? Like 6-6 very much feels a real possibility for this squad.
And for Mizzou, they have been competitive. Like, they have competed. Didn't they win the SEC East?
They won the SEC East twice. I mean, they won the SEC East their first year in, and it was a down time for the SEC East. But
I think Indiana beat them that year.
That I cannot speak to. But, yeah, you had Gary Pinkel as head coach, James Franklin as the quarterback. I mean, Mizzou had this stretch where they were just cranking out defensive linemen to the NFL. I mean, edge rushers, D lineman, Shane Ray, who ended up being a bust. Michael Sam was the defensive player of the year. He didn't really pan out in the league, but for a while there, Terry Buckner, I mean, they were just pumping out defensive linemen to the NFL. That was kind of their niche. And they really were rolling under Gary Pinkel, but they've sort of, reset to the mean under Eli Drinkwitz, as Georgia is now at the top of college football, Tennessee, Florida rebuilding, and Mizzou is kind of sitting there in that 6-6 purgatory.
So what would, just kind of looking at their schedule, what would kind of tip some odds in their favor? Like, they've got a game at Auburn that they're certainly not going to be favored in, even as Auburn is kind of in a similar situation. But I mean, Auburn you would still consider to be a better football team right now, yeah?
That might be a good game. It depends on the quarterback position. I don't know who's in a better spot. Yeah, and Brian Harsin is unquestionably under way more pressure than Eli Drinkwitz is. That guy, I don't think you can say is on the hot seat. I'm looking at week 2 against Kansas State for Missouri. Kansas State's intriguing, man. I mean, we're going to talk about college football transfers at 11:20. One of those is Kansas State's new quarterback, Adrian Martinez, former Tennessee commit. Spent the last, what seems like 9 years at Nebraska as their starting quarterback. Was productive. They weren't winning, but he was productive. Deuce Vaughn, it might be one of the most exciting running backs in college football this year. And Mizzou is at Kansas State in week 2. But, yeah, they got to go to Auburn. They got to go to Florida, and that's just 2 of their first 3 SEC games. It's going to be a tough slate for Mizzou. Their cross-divisional opponent, as I look at it, is Auburn. Yeah, they always play Arkansas in that last game of the regular season. But a bowl game is a success for Mizzou this year, especially winning a bowl game. You finish with a winning record, and things are looking good, and they're recruiting well. They are. Like Luther Burden, I know he's an in-state. It seems like every time Mizzou gets this big blue-chip prospect like a Dorial Green-Beckham, it's an in-state guy that wants to represent his home state. But still, Luther Burden is one of the 5 best receivers in college football, or in his recruiting class last year. So I think there's reason to be excited. Eli Drinkwitz is, a fun interview, a fun guy to listen to at press conferences.
The Jim Rome clip.
Oh, that was fantastic.
So that's I have not. Jim Rome does not go viral that often, but after the Jeremy Pruitt situation, the most recent NCAA investigation with the Tennessee Volunteers and how culpable both Jeremy Pruitt and Jeremy Pruitt's wife and that previous coaching staff were in the recruiting violations that were handed down, Jim Rome had Eli Drinkwitz on his radio show, his CBS simulcast show, I think like a day or 2 after. And it was like, I know Eli Drinkwitz has had some funny lines before. Hadn't he said something to the effect of wanting to fight another SEC coach recently? Or no, something about Dan Mullen. He took like a hatchet to Dan Mullen one time.
Well, he did a thing where he pulled out a lightsaber after Mizzou beat Florida last year because Mullen wore the Darth Vader getup when they won a Halloween game the year before. Yeah, he's always got a funny little quip in him. But yeah, this was him with Jim Rome the other day.
I thought you were going to introduce my record, but with the latest allegations against Tennessee, let's hold up on what my record is because I expected to vacate some wins, and that's going to help my record a little bit. Okay?
Oh, man, this is getting better. This is getting so much better. Can I ask you, I wasn't necessarily going to go there, but you would be the beneficiary of that. Since you brought it up, can I get your reaction to the latest allegations against Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I got to question my wife's commitment to winning. I don't know how much she's committed if she's not engaging in some of these things. I didn't know that was fair play. So, we got to, it was a little bit surprising to see the in-depth nature of what was going on there. But I am sure glad that Tennessee was taking some ownership of it, and we'll see what the results are. But it's pretty interesting.
He doesn't know if his wife is invested enough in the commitment to winning.
You think he had to sit down with Mrs. Drinkwitz?
I bet some coaches did. Coaches did. You make that joke, but there's a lot of desperate people in those jobs.
Listen, honey,
who are miserable. GAs. The same kind of people that are having shoved in their inbox because the head coach doesn't want to deal with it. The preseason coaches poll. Just do this. Get it over with. And some poor GA who's been sleeping on a cot in the facility for the last 6 weeks getting ready for fall camp has a sit down with his not yet wife, fiance, probably at that stage in life, be like, listen, babe, if we're going to make it, if we're going to do this,
I'm going to need more out of you.
If we're going to get to the point where, if we're going to get to the most desired job in America, which is that of middling fired college football coach, so we can make generational money to just have gone maybe 500 or a little bit less. We got to cheat. We got to cheat, and you got to cheat. But in the sense of, maybe make a car payment for a recruit here or there. I guarantee at least one coach somewhere in college football had that kind of a conversation with their significant other.
Jeremy Pruitt, I'm looking up I'm trying to remember Tennessee's 2018 game against Mizzou. No, they lost 50-17. They got blitzed, but that was Barry Odom. That was not Eli Drinkwitz. So Pruitt was 2-0 against Odom, or against Drinkwitz, rather.
Oh, goodness. All right. We'll have another SEC stat of the day at the end of the 11 o'clock hour on
South Carolina.
On South Carolina.
Another SEC East program.
Again, is of great relevancy to the Tennessee Volunteers' quest to be, the second best team in the East this year?
Relevancy.
What did you say?
Relevancy. That's what you said.
Relevant.
Moses Moody.
I was doing so well with my ad reads today, too.
It is 11:01. Good morning from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Joint practices between the Titans and Bucks are over. They will take the field for preseason game number 2 on Saturday at Nissan Stadium. Titans head coach Mike Vrabel was critical of second-year corner Caleb Farley after practice on Wednesday, but was asked if Farley had a bounce-back performance on Thursday.
Absolutely. From what I saw, I think he was, again, he comes in with a great attitude every single day. I mean, he's had a long rehab. And he spent a lot of time in his building in the offseason, and he wants to be good. He wants to help us. He wants to define a role for himself.
The Lee Company countdown to kickoff hits the air at 3 p.m. Titans countdown at 5 for a 6 p.m. kickoff at Nissan Stadium between Titans and Bucks. 3 preseason games taking place tonight. The Panthers are at the Patriots after a heated week of joint practice in New England. That's a 6 p.m. kick. Saints and Packers play at 7, and it's Texans and Rams tonight at 9. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second down on a Friday. Welcome in. Welcome back if you've been hanging out with us so far. We're happy to have you either way. If you're on FM radio listening to us, thank you much. If you're on Zone TV, Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch, we're live streaming there as well. We'd be happy to have you as a part of the show. 615-737-1045 is how you do that. We being Lucas Panzica, myself, we're back in studio. Second time this week. Slowly starting to creep back into normalcy. How many training camp practices do we have left?
Well, there's 4 left, but we only have 3 that we are broadcasting from.
Right, because Blaine and Mickey are going to be out there on Monday. Well, somebody's going to be out there. We will see. Anyway, let's get into a conversation about a Tennessee volunteer commit that is going to be on the high school football broadcast tonight with Lucas Panzica and Will Bowling. But first, before we do that, do we have news?
I mean, I don't know if it's worth the breaking news sounder. It's not positive news.
Well, that's why I asked inquisitively. News?
Yes.
Question mark? Did you see the vocal variation?
We have Tennessee recruiting news, but I'm not going to hit the news sounder because it is negative news for a young man that is still in high school.
Oh, well, that stinks. What's the news?
Ethan Davis, the 4-star tight end committed to Tennessee out of Georgia, announced just now on social media he will miss the entirety of his senior season with a torn labrum.
Oh, that stinks. That's what Baker Mayfield had last year. Now, obviously, one's job relies far more heavily on the ability to use your shoulder than the others, but still, that is deeply unfortunate.
Yeah, he is the 3rd highest rated commit right now in the class of 2023 for Tennessee, the number 8 tight end in the country and the number 2 overall player, or the number 2 tight end, rather, in the state of Georgia.
He's committed to play football and basketball at Tennessee?
Yeah, it was one of those, but I don't put much stock in that ever. I mean, can you name me a single guy that has been able to successfully do that at the Power 5 level in the last 10 years?
That's why I don't remember reading that the first time around.
That's happened at Tennessee recently. I remember Malachi Weidman, the 4-star receiver, came to play football and basketball. He ended up transferring out. I don't even know if he found a landing spot. D. Beckwith. Same thing, came to play football and basketball. Neither really transpired. He's now a Kentucky player and only a Kentucky football player. I feel like it's one of those things that coaches will tell you, we're going to give you the opportunity to, but it hardly ever pans out. Bruce Ellington, I think I'm getting that name right, is the last guy that I remember doing it successfully at South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. So Ethan Davis announces this news himself on his Twitter account, @Davis1Ethan. Due to a torn labrum, I will be missing my senior year of football. Thank you to the entire Collins Hill community. 9 out.
CJ Phaeton, another one that Slay puts in the YouTube chat.
Okay. Slay would know. Hello, Slay. Good morning. I'm surprised he's not taking his nap. But for the University of Tennessee, so here's what one, obviously that stinks. That's really sucks for a player who's been hugely successful throughout the course of his high school career. You know how much fun senior seasons are for those kind of guys, especially when you are as heralded and projected to do as well at the next level as Ethan Davis clearly is. Did you read the On3 article about this?
About the injury?
About the injury.
No, I haven't gotten a chance to.
So on3.com, and they're based out of Nashville. In fact, we have a couple of friends that work there. Davis, this is interesting. This is the final graph of their write-up, and tell me how this strikes you. Davis currently has an On3 NIL valuation of $169,000.
Interesting.
Have you heard that before?
I've seen that floated around from On3. I think they're the only ones that do that type of stuff. But that is interesting because I don't know, and it's not to criticize whatever model they have.
Yeah.
But I just don't know what rhyme or reason you could have to put something like that together.
Are we doing spot track on high school players? I mean, you laugh, but
it's a new era. Yeah.
That, to me, I would be curious. I don't know who we could. Maybe we'll call our buddy Travis and see if there's somebody who we could talk to about just the premise of an On3 NIL valuation, because that's the first time that I've read or seen something like that. We're out here Zillowing high school kids, which to me would present the same problems as Zillow initially did, right? If you're trying to sell your house, but Zillow has it, substantially below your asking price or something like that, aren't you going to be pissed when somebody comes to you with the Zillow thing and says, yeah, but Zillow says you're only worth X, Y, and Z? I would not like this at all. I think this is a very dangerous thing that, without more information, just on face value, and maybe I should not speak without having more information, but just to see that as a part of a write-up on a high school kid for the first time, I wouldn't want somebody telling me, especially a publication that I don't know how the metrics are based. I wouldn't want that at all. Somebody telling me what my value is, because that maybe in some case it helps, but more often than not, I think, because do they drop his NIL valuation because he's missing his senior year?
That's a good point.
You know what I'm saying? Do they drop that? I would like to talk to somebody about this. Okay. Maybe we'll work on that over the weekend.
Brandon in the YouTube chat says Shannon Terry, who runs On3 Sports, says it's based on valuation with social media accounts and things of that nature.
Well, I guess that makes sense, but I don't know, man. Okay. Do we know Shannon Terry? I don't know personally.
He was in studio with 3HL not too long ago.
Okay. Did they ask him about this? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. They talked a lot about Nico Iamaleava, who he was fawning over on the air.
Understandable. Okay. Well, maybe we'll see if there's not a way that we can get some more information on this, because that to me is fascinating. Now, tell me what you have going. We've already plugged high school football once, but since we're here, you are on the 104.5 The Zone High School Game of the Week. The coverage starts at 6:45 tonight, and we'll go through 11 p.m. So you'll have all your high school results from around the mid-state on the 104.5 The Zone. Is there a name specifically for the show?
It's the 104.5 The Zone High School Football Game of the Week. Friday Night Finals is the post-game show. Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Slay, by the way, says, yes, they did dive into the NIL valuations with Shannon Terry.
Okay, so maybe we go back in the archives and we find that conversation from 3HL, and that'll be an interesting talking point for next week, perhaps. Anyway, you have a Vols commit on the broadcast tonight.
Yeah, Aiden Bussell, the left tackle for the Mount Juliet Golden Bears. He was actually Tennessee's first in-state commit of the 2023 class, something that he's talked about meaning a lot to him. And obviously there was a slew of in-state commits coming after that, particularly Caleb Herring, the number 1 overall prospect in the state out of Riverdale, also a local prospect. But Bussell, a 3-star, he has all the size, 6'5", 287 for a left tackle at the college level. But, not a blue chip guy by any stretch, but certainly big for Heupel to get in with a program like Mount Juliet that does pump out offensive linemen. That was the thing I asked Ramon about when it came to Bussell. He said, I don't know much about the kid. I haven't watched him a ton individually, but I know that program. And Mount Juliet, they're a run and gun type of team too. Go, 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 go. And they take on a Gallatin team that runs the flex bone. So completely different styles as they're going to try to grind out the clock. Gallatin will.
Oh my God, that sounds like something about that does sound like it sounds like sloppy high school football, but it does sound kind of fun.
Well, we had that last year, week 1. It was Ravenwood MBA, and MBA is the same way. Even though they've got a very dynamic player, they're not a flex bone offense by any stretch, but a bunch of wrestlers. NBA has a renowned wrestling program. A bunch of wrestlers on the offensive line that will just manhandle people, and they love to run the football really hard-nosed, and they'll just grind it out little by little with long, sustained drives. And they got the ball first. They had like a 6-7 minute drive to score, and then Ravenwood gets the ball with Mississippi State commit Chris Parson and scores on the first play of the drive. So you can see the styles just like that. NBA went on to dominate and win the game. They play tonight, by the way, in a matchup of future Egg Bowl quarterbacks.
Oh.
It's Chris Parson, Mississippi State commit of Ravenwood, 4-star prospect. Marcel Reed, Ole Miss commit of MBA, 4-star prospect. So that's going to be a really fun one. If you're driving around and you're not able to get out to Gallatin where we'll be, go to Ravenwood High School because that's going to be a really fun game, I think.
Look how excited you are.
Yeah, man. High school football.
Excellent.
It's more enjoyable with every passing year in the mid-state.
The talent's only getting better.
The talent
we've
goes
said
up.
that kind of, a lot, but I mean, it really just it's simple math. Like as the population of the city of Nashville continues to grow, Metro Nashville, you're going to have more people. You're going to have more opportunities for high-level talent, and the programs here they commit legitimately to athletics in that way. So
Well,
yeah, it's been great.
I'm excited tonight because anytime I get to go to a community or a stadium that I've never been to before, especially a long-standing community like Gallatin, that's always that's my favorite part about doing this on Friday nights. And I love going back to Ravenwood and MBA and Brentwood Academy and all these places that we've been a bunch of times. But I've never been to Gallatin, so I'm really excited to watch this historic rivalry tonight and see the passion in the stands.
6:45 tonight. That's when the coverage starts. 615-737-1045 if you want to jump in. We're gonna get into a conversation about transfer players in college football and some of the ones we are most excited to watch this season. There's a variety of different names. Obviously, it's going to continue to just expedite year over year, and a lot of people still hung up in the transfer portal. As a matter of fact, it's kind of created this backlog in ways that are interesting. But we'll do that here in just a second. What's the call on, Lucas?
High school football.
High school football. Well, that's why I asked, because I wanted to make sure that we were keeping with the same train of thought before I took it. Justin is in Smyrna up next. Hello, Justin.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great.
Just want to hear your thoughts on Rockville High School's chances this year and talk a little bit about Smyrna High's new turf field they got put in over the summer.
I appreciate the call.
I have heard about Smyrna's new field. We were at Smyrna last year for the first round of the postseason when, ironically, they were playing Gallatin, who we have tonight. Gallatin won that game. But, yeah, Smyrna with new facilities, that's always cool when you see high school kids get that upgrade. As far as Rockville, Justin, I'd be lying if I said I've really dove into what the Rockets are doing or dove in. Help me out here.
Dove.
If
I've really dove into what that sounds right.
But they were fun last year. I mean, they beat Blackman in a shootout near the end of the year. They lost to Oakland towards the end of the season, which you can find a lot of teams that lose to Oakland, and barely lost to Shelbyville in the first round of the postseason. But I would have to dig a little deeper on what the Rockets bring back in 2022. We'll see if we get some score updates. Justin, if you're a high school football fan, that's the thing about Friday Night Finals. We want you to call in. 615-737-1045. Whatever game you're at, tell us the role players, tell us the final score, how the game transpired. We'll talk to reporters and people that cover the sport.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have Tate Matthews. He's part of our coverage.
Right.
Every single week. Joe Spears, the Tennessean, calls in all the time.
Because I was curious. I was like, how do you, unless you're sending a bunch of promotions people out to, scout high school football games, how are you guys doing this?
It's a collaborative effort. We have coaches call in. We have local play-by-play broadcasters call in. But, we want fans to call in. We absolutely encourage it. If there's a game we haven't hit on, or even if we do, if I say a score, I still want you to call in and tell me what happened. Tell me the names of the kids that made a difference in that game, and we'll be going tonight until 11.
Did you see the face I made at you when he asked that question?
Yeah, you weren't prepared for that. That's okay.
just pure panic. All right, the most exciting transfer players in college football. We're going to talk about who we're most excited to see in a new spot coming up next.
The Buck Rising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Welcome back here on the show. Happy to have you. Buck Rising, Lucas Panziga with you until 1 o'clock. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. So, college football rapidly approaching. A lot of interesting matchups that people are starting to talk about. Preseason AP poll out. We've dove, yes. Did we decide on dove?
Yes, I think we will settle on dove.
Why did I go right back there after we just had such a speed bump with that earlier? This is why we're not good at this. Because we just spent that much time trying to figure out the proper grammar on dove or dive, or did you say dived at one point?
I believe the proper word is divin.
And then my brain immediately defaults right back there. Swell. Let's just get stuck in the mud again. There's a lot of different players playing for different teams in college football this year because the transfer portal has been wild. I mean, just the sheer number of players who have moved around this offseason and how much more NIL has kind of expedited the process. Not necessarily just because, like, players are going where there are money opportunities, but I'd be curious to know if people look at this the same way that I do. I think that the optics of NIL has driven so much more, not divin, but driven, so much more of the transfer portal traffic this year than anything else. Just the perception of, oh, hey, I can move and I can get paid more money, or I can get paid money to play for a better program, or I can heighten my profile because Alabama is now accepting transfers and all these things. Like I can go compete for a national title, everything. I think there is it's so much more optically driven than data driven to say if you transfer X, Y, and Z, you're going to end up with more NIL money on the other side. Because I think that's not worked the way a lot of kids expected it to. Miles Brennan, and he had, 5 NIL endorsements? Like he had decent money coming in.
Yeah, I mean, he'd been there since 2016.
Goes into the portal, doesn't necessarily see any action, comes back out of the portal to go to return to LSU, and then doesn't win the starting job and just says, all right, peace.
Yeah, and I don't know that he didn't see any action. I mean, maybe he was just weighing staying in a familiar environment where he had kind of built up he was well known around campus. This is the guy who was supposed to be the heir apparent to Joe Burrow, and injuries derailed him. He was productive in spots. He was hurt in other spots. So, I don't know. I don't know if you're weighing the question of, okay, do I want to just hit the reset button for just 1 year and finish my college career somewhere else, or just finish it out here in my comfort zone and battle it out for a starting job?
So with all that being said, there's a lot of notable names that have moved around in prominent places, especially to ranked teams now that we have the preseason top 25 to kind of work off of. And so when I said to Lucas today, well, is there an interesting way that we can talk about this? Like, can we look at the top transfers that we're most excited to see in college football this year? You said you already had a list. Like this has been stashed somewhere in your desk drawer, or you've been, writing notes on the wall of your bedroom of the top 5 transfer portal players of the college football season. Like you had this ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a common theme throughout the offseason, right? It's been transfer portal, NIL, conference realignment. Like, up until the last few weeks in SEC Media Days, we had barely talked about actual football because that has dominated the college football conversation. But what I love about it, there are negatives to the transfer portal, but what I do like about it is that in a lot of cases, it'll give fans reason to care about parts of the college football geography that they otherwise wouldn't care about. Like, Nebraska fans will be kind of intrigued at what Kansas State is doing because Adrian Martinez is over there, right?
I don't know. Do you think a lot of Pitt fans are going to turn on USC games because Jordan Addison's playing?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there are more than a few Tennessee fans that probably stayed up to watch a quarter of Pac-12 After Dark. Say, let's see how Garantano does here. Absolutely. Not to mention USC.
Only to hate watch him. There was no good intentions behind the Tennessee fans that were waiting up to watch Washington State games.
Now, I imagine there were some Tennessee folks watching Cardinals preseason game, which I never looked at how Garantano did. Well, he'll be here next week.
I think he threw a touchdown. Oh, my God, that's right.
He'll be here next week. He didn't get cut, did he?
I don't know. Wait. Look that up for me, and I'll stall. Do you think we should try and get him on? I think that would be fascinating. I would be legitimately curious to talk to JG. I think that guy has had he probably has such an interesting perspective, and now that he's at least in a camp. I mean, you're not going to say anything inflammatory as an undrafted rookie free agent coming into an NFL tryout situation.
Yeah, he was 7 of 10 for 54 yards in a score.
In the preseason game?
Yes.
Is he still on the roster, though?
Yes.
Should we try to get JG on? I don't know anybody with Cardinals PR, but I could probably ask around.
Yeah, we could work on it.
Okay.
Be interesting.
I would be so curious to see what that guy has to say.
But, I mean, there's several transfers that I have put into sort of categories like most important, most exciting or interesting, and most underrated.
Most important, most exciting / interesting, and most underrated?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like transfers that aren't dominating the headline of that particular program, but that are going to have to play a huge role.
All right, so why don't we do the game this way as we produce this live on the air? Why don't I give you a name, and why don't you tell me which category this player fits in for you?
Go ahead.
Does that seem like a fun way to do this?
Yeah.
All right, let's try it. Do we have any terrible imaging that we can produce on the fly? Why did you have that so quickly? What is this? Is this the geography bee music?
I don't know. I don't think this is what we use for the geography bee. I can't remember what we use this for.
It came out of nowhere. It was like me getting hit with my own Oscars music. It disoriented me.
What you got?
All right. Quinn Ewers, formerly of Ohio State, now at Texas. The former number 1 overall prospect in the 2022 class playing quarterback this year. What category would Quinn Ewers fit for you?
Well, if you asked me a couple weeks ago, I would have said most important. I would have said that Texas's success this year hinges on Quinn Ewers living up to expectations, especially he doesn't have Isaiah Nayer anymore, the Wyoming transfer out for the year. Ajayi Hall, the Alabama transfer at wideout, he was arrested. He's suspended indefinitely. But now I think I might put it in the interesting category because I don't know that Quinn Ewers is going to win that job.
It doesn't sound like it.
All the noise coming out of Austin is saying, hey, man, Hudson Card's not going away. He was a high-profile recruit in his own right.
Hudson Card has something to say about it.
He's been in that program. He knows that system. I don't know, man.
I'm still giggling about the music. Anyway, if I gave you former Georgia wide receiver Jermaine Burton, now transferring to the Alabama Crimson Tide, would that be most interesting, most exciting, or most underrated? And I guess most important.
Underrated, because all the noise about an Alabama transfer right now is about Jahmyr Gibbs, and for great reason. The former Georgia Tech running back. I mean, that guy is going to be electric this fall as a kick returner in the slot, catching passes out of the backfield, running the football. But Jermaine Burton might be wide receiver 1 for Alabama. And by the nature of that offense with a Heisman Trophy quarterback, he's probably going to be very productive, which he wasn't overly productive at Georgia. But I just feel like you're not hearing his name tossed around a lot, where Jermaine Burton might be a 1,000-yard receiver this year.
Most important, most exciting, or most underrated? Caleb Williams, the quarterback from Oklahoma, now transferring to USC.
Oh, most important, no question. We've talked about the pressure that Lincoln Riley is under to win the Pac-12. He has 2 shots at it. Be embarrassing for USC to go into the Big Ten having not won the Pac-12 since 2020, and that was a COVID year, so I don't even know how far back you do have to go. But most important, because Caleb Williams is critical to USC's success this year.
USC is ranked in the preseason poll.
Yep. They're so talented.
I'm really struggling with this.
I have questions about their offensive line.
Which is not the place. It's just another Lincoln Riley Oklahoma team. Okay, yes, they are ranked after winning 4 games, and you are correct in the assessment that they have added significantly more talent than they had under Clay Helton. But, I mean, if they're just going to peter around the way that they did in the Big 12, because we had a conversation earlier in the year. I can't. How am I doing serious analysis with this damn music behind me? Like, if I gave you Lincoln Riley or Mario Cristobal, with the way that you know that those two coaches, as far as their recruiting habits and their staff's habits are concerned, the way they like to build their teams, would you take Mario Cristobal or would you take Lincoln Riley? Because I maintain that I would favor Mario Cristobal because you can do more if you are competent in the trenches, offensive line and defensive line, and that is somewhere Mario thrives. And Lincoln Riley, in watching him as the head coach of Oklahoma, the next coming, right? They have never been able to really get that right.
Yeah. Strength of schedule is more favorable to USC. Way more dynamic at the quarterback position, though I like Tyler Van Dyke. And on the outside, Jordan Addison was the Biletnikoff winner. He's now a USC player. Mario Williams followed.
Stop. You're doing other players on the list that I had on the list.
I am. I'm sorry. But yes, it is an interesting comparison, but I think the ceiling is higher for USC this year.
Most important, most underrated, or most exciting? Jordan Addison, the defending Biletnikoff Award winner, the top wide receiver in the country, going from Pitt also to USC.
Yeah, lumping him in with Caleb Williams of most important with that conversation about the pressure on USC right out the gate, despite the fact that they were a 4-8 football team last year.
Jahmyr Gibbs. Oh, it's starting over.
Yeah, it's like 2.5 minutes long. I got to start it over.
All right, we'll figure it out for the next time. The running back from Georgia Tech now to Alabama that's got a lot of people talking, as you mentioned. It's who's the last Alabama running back that you've really felt dominant? Najee Harris? Is that where you would kind of look?
Absolutely, but Brian Robinson was a great player last year.
Brian Robinson was solid, but like Brian Robinson, Alabama has been transcendent at running back, and Brian Robinson was not that.
No.
So Najee Harris is probably the last transcendent Alabama runner, which is not that long ago, but still, you understand my point.
Only 2 years.
Right. Down year. Rebuild.
It was a rebuild.
I hate him. I really hate Nick Saban for that. That is such trash. Exciting, underrated, important. Jahmyr Gibbs, the Georgia Tech running back transfer.
So exciting. Every time the ball is in his hands, he has a chance to make a game-breaking play. He showed that immediately in the spring game for Alabama. He was electric and all ACC talent on a horrible Georgia Tech football team last year. He was floundering on that roster. Very excited to see Jahmyr Gibbs.
Let's go back to the quarterbacks. We talked about one leaving Oklahoma. Let's talk about one transferring to Oklahoma. UCF, then UCLA. Quarterback Dillon Gabriel, who is now going to be the quarterback of the Oklahoma Sooners. Jeff Lebby is now the offensive coordinator there after being at Ole Miss last year, and he gets a reunion with Dillon Gabriel and the opportunity to kind of spice things up for OU.
Important because OU, despite all the turnover, a new head coach, a new staff, roster overhaul with the transfer portal under Brent Venables, the expectations don't change. We talk about the nature of the Big 12 being as wide open as it is. There's about 4 teams that you could realistically say have a good shot to win this conference. Oklahoma is without a doubt one of those teams, and it's going to come back to the quarterback, Dillon Gabriel.
One more. Another Alabama, or transferring to Alabama. It's the racket. It's all in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
Eli Ricks, corner, last year at LSU, now playing for the Crimson Tide.
Important. We talked to Mike Felder about his concerns about Alabama. He looked at the defensive backfield, and as we said, his reasoning was basically because bleep happens in the defensive backfield sometimes.
At some point, somebody's going to have a coverage bust. Like, for no other reason than the randomness of college football and explosive plays will the Alabama Crimson Tide defense get beat deep.
But Eli Ricks hasn't had a great offseason. He is coming off of a back injury. He hasn't really been able to get fully inserted into that Alabama rotation throughout training camp. Kool-Aid sitting on one side, locking down that side as an Alabama corner. They might need Eli Ricks to step up, a former 5-star talent. So I'm going important.
The most exciting, the most underrated, and the most important transfer college football players. I think that went pretty well for us having not planned any of that until other than we were going to do that in real time.
Let me throw in Zach Evans at Ole Miss. Exciting former 5-star prospect.
What are you doing? An outside looking in? What are you doing here?
Well, there's a few more that must be mentioned.
Okay.
Zach Evans, 7 yards per carry, 13 yards per catch in only 6 games last year. The former TCU running back at Ole Miss, and Spencer Rattler at South Carolina, who we'll talk about a little bit coming up next.
Those are 2 worthy nominees. Well done.
Last one, Casey Thompson.
Where are you getting these names? You're just pulling these names. Do you have? Is there a notepad in front of you? What are you looking
I jotted
at?
some down before the show, but now I'm just going off the top of my head. I'm just so excited. Casey Thompson, the Texas transfer to Nebraska. Scott Frost's job might hinge on Casey Thompson being able to win in Nebraska.
Will Compton feels so good about his Nebraska football team, and he continues to propagate this nonsense that they were the best 3-win football team in college football last year.
Yeah.
He's just so full of it.
I mean, they kind of were.
No,
it's crazy.
Don't give him credence. No, the way that they lost some of these games is absurd.
But now, that was the theme, right? It was close losses, 1-possession losses. But at some point, that's kind of on you, right? At what point is it just not a coincidence anymore? You know?
Well, I would say that there is enough of a sample size. Like Bill Parcells doesn't get, it's not the end all be all, but you are what your record says you are. And if you're the best 3-win team in college football, maybe that's so, but you're still a 3-win team in college football.
Sure, but our buddy Josh Pate, worth saying, hates that phrase. He thinks it is the biggest lie in all of college football, that you are what your record says you are.
Pate?
Yeah, he hates that. But with Nebraska...
What is he doing? Wasn't he supposed to be here this week at some point?
We'll get him after training camp. A lot of moving parts in these couple of weeks.
Why? Am I yelling at him for something that's not his fault?
Yes.
Okay.
But Nebraska lost a bunch of games because of game-breaking mistakes that they made, maybe they lost this game by 3 points, but they fumbled the ball at midfield and it got returned for a touchdown, at some point it's on the coaching staff.
Yeah, the Scott Frost thing, it's the thing that I was worried was going to happen to Tennessee fans if they got their way. If you bring back the and you know what? They kind of did with Phil Fulmer. They kind of did. In that circumstance, I'm not going to go after them the way that the Chris Childers did. We had so many nasty tweets about Chris Childers.
Oh yeah,
the other day I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, "Whatever you paid him to be on the air, I'll pay him more to get off." Because he blamed them for Shiano Sunday in a very Pat 40-esque fashion. But at a certain point, some of that stuff with the University of Tennessee, like the Scott Frost coming home, program legend, all these things, and then because it looked great at UCF. It looked so good at UCF, and then they just kind of pooped themselves when they got to Nebraska.
Yeah.
And there's been a variety of different things, and it sounds like the athletic administration there has been kind of, questionable at certain points leading up to the Scott Frost hire, but still.
Are you going to watch Nebraska Northwestern in Ireland next Saturday?
Well, I will, because that's interesting. I don't know why either of those teams are there. I don't get that.
It does feel random.
Nobody's clamoring for that over there.
Northwestern's coming off of a terrible year.
Do you think this is going to be a well-attended football game? Because I can't help but think that this is kind of a mess.
Well, anytime Nebraska's involved, it typically is well-attended. I will say that.
Yeah, but it's Ireland.
If Nebraska fans can jam pack a stadium in Ireland,
can you think of a more out of place fan base than Nebraska fans in Ireland?
Walking around with big corn on their head, like corn hats, walking around Dublin.
Everybody else around them be too drunk to notice. It's just I wear my corn hat on Wednesdays too.
Mark in the YouTube chat submits Brew McCoy as an impact transfer, but he has yet to be eligible.
Buddy, and not only that, but have you heard Jason Swain talk about him? He doesn't seem like he's in a good place, or not. He's not in a reliable contributor place. Good place is too far, I would say. But it doesn't seem like they're basically the question is he hasn't played a lot of football.
Oh yeah, I mean he hasn't. He had to get in shape. It was a conditioning thing for him coming in. But there's no question that just the intangibles, the physicality, the talent that he has would be huge for Tennessee this year.
All right, coming up next, we've got another SEC stat of the day. As I guess we go 2 for every Friday until football starts. Is that what's happening?
Yep.
All right, South Carolina SEC stat of the day. That's next. SEC Stat of the Day, Part 2. Let's do it. We got South Carolina on deck. Who else? Who do we have left then after we get to the SEC's USC?
So we'll do Texas A&M and Vanderbilt next week because Vanderbilt plays football next Saturday.
Spicy.
And then I figure we'll do Tennessee the day after the Vols play Ball State.
What am I? Oh, I've got a preseason game next Saturday.
Yes.
I would have kind of liked to gone. Who do they open with?
Oh, they're at Hawaii. So I'm sure you would have liked to go.
Yeah, no, that one I couldn't make.
It'll be a late kick anyway in Hawaii, so you'll be able to catch a good portion of it even after your post-game responsibilities.
All right. So we'll be watching Pac-12 After Dark in the press box as we sit there. By the way, this affects nobody but me and like 4 other people that cover these preseason games. But what in the hell did we do to somebody to where all 3 of the Titans preseason games are at night?
I know.
I'm so angry.
What I would do for a noon Sunday preseason game.
I'm I came back from Baltimore last week and I was legitimately I was defeated after the first road trip of the year. I'm like, we just worked entirely too hard for a preseason game of just complete and utter slop.
But I will say, and I was talking to Rhett about this on our way to training camp yesterday, and this does impact the fans. Can you imagine if we had 3 more preseason games? Like it's 2 years ago, we would have had 3 more preseason games.
I would have been, yeah.
Thank God for the move to 3 instead of 4.
This is a very, very responsible thing that the NFL has done and also is going to make them so much more money. Anyway, so South Carolina Gamecocks, one of the most interesting teams in college football with one of the most interesting transfers in college football. Shane Beamer in year 2, a lot of promise. And a conference, or a division in a conference that is of a pretty competitive balance beyond the clear and obvious top of the heap, which, of course, in the SEC East is Georgia. What is the stat of the day for the South Carolina Gamecocks?
The stat or stats of the day is a 75% completion percentage, nearly 1,500 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, plus 3 rushing touchdowns in 9 games. Those were Spencer Rattler's numbers last year as the quarterback at Oklahoma. This is just to remind people that Spencer Rattler didn't crash and burn at Oklahoma. He played poorly. He struggled in the most important game of the year after they had built up a large lead against Texas in the Red River rivalry. And he was supplanted by another former 5-star in Caleb Williams, and the rest is history. Williams took off with that job. He's now at USC. Rattler was a stud in 2020. He was a Heisman Trophy favorite heading into last season, was a number 1 overall pick favorite. I mean, when you looked at betting odds going into last season, top of the list for the number 1 overall pick was Spencer Rattler. Has a rocket arm, has all the talent to be an elite college football quarterback, and he has weapons. That's the thing about South Carolina. Josh Vann comes back at wide receiver. Jaheim Bell broke out at tight end last season. He's back. Wide receiver Antwain Wells Jr. had nearly 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns for James Madison last season. He transfers in. He brought former Oklahoma tight end Austin Stogner with him. People have forgotten about former four-star running back Marshawn Lloyd, who got hurt last year in the preseason, missed the whole year. He is back. I know I just rattled off a million names, but it's just to make the point that if you're looking for a wild card in the SEC, and more specifically in the SEC East, it's South Carolina. Look no further than what Shane Beamer is building down there, and it starts and ends with Spencer Rattler.
And so that is a great way to kind of take it piece by piece there, because with Spencer Rattler and the potential rebound that he may have, I'm curious about what it means for his development, because it was, Spencer Rattler is one of these things. And in fact, he's a really good, or just a recent example. There's plenty of other good examples of, all right, is he a good pro prospect and also a good college football quarterback? Because those can be they can both be parallels, but they can also kind of run up against each other. We have this conversation with Will Levis and Hendon Hooker as well. Will Levis is clearly and obviously the better pro prospect. It doesn't mean that he will end up being the better college football quarterback between the two. Those aren't the same things. So with Spencer Rattler and what his development may look like, I almost come back to the conversation that we started the show with, like bad quarterback habits that you picked up. How far has he come since? So what was the game where he got benched? Was it Texas?
It was Texas, yeah. Williams had to come in, and Texas ended up coming back or no, it was the opposite. I apologize. I said Oklahoma had built up a big lead. it was Texas.
That's
that
right.
had the
Texas
lead.
blew it. I was on a
That's what it
plane
was.
home from somewhere.
Yeah, I remember I was watching the Arkansas Mizzou game, or Ole Miss game, Arkansas Ole Miss, which
Equally
is
nuts.
just as crazy. It was like a 55-53 type of game that came down to a 2-point conversion. But yeah. So I apologize. It was Texas that blew a giant lead, and that was because Caleb Williams stepped in.
There were audible gasps on the plane because a lot of Southwest flights now have the television. You can watch live TV like via their app or whatever. So there was a bunch of people on the plane watching this Texas-Oklahoma game, and an audible gasp when I think it was the Oklahoma running back scored at the end of that game to just wave Texas off in the final minutes. Like, Texas fans are everywhere. It's like Notre Dame. It's a national fan base, but oh my God.
Yeah, and that really derailed things for Texas down the stretch, and they lose to Kansas, and they go 5-7.
So, looking at South Carolina's schedule, they have an interesting situation. So Arkansas is their cross-conference opponent. Georgia is there on September the 17th, so fairly early in the season. They're at Kentucky and hosting. Oh, so they have A&M as well.
Yep.
Hosting A&M as well. Missouri, Vandy, Florida, Tennessee, Clemson.
It's a tough schedule.
Man,
that's a really tough schedule.
Especially to end with Clemson as your rivalry week game, out of conference, top of the heap for the ACC.
At their place.
I think any positive momentum I would feel about South Carolina, regardless of what Spencer Rattler looks like this year, like if they make a bowl game, I think that's fine. That's all well and good. And Gamecock fans, to their credit, they are passionate no matter how bad that football team is. Like that always looks like a good environment to play in.
It is, and I might be biased because I've only had one experience there. It is in the first quarter. Sandstorm is rocking. The fans are there. It's awesome. The stadium's a little out of the way off campus. You got to take an Uber to get there, right? You can't walk there from campus. But I went there for the Tennessee-South Carolina game in 2014 when Tennessee, it was Dobbs coming out party and a big comeback win in overtime. And I remember Tennessee came back. South Carolina blew it in the fourth quarter, and the Vols sent it to OT. When overtime started, South Carolina fans were filing out of that stadium at the beginning of overtime like the game had been over for 5 minutes. Like, I remember looking around so confused at what was happening there. Like, it was like they were getting blown out or something. They were just leaving in droves, and that stadium was like half full at the beginning of overtime in 2014.
Wow.
I didn't understand it. It was fun in the first quarter, great environment. And then, near the end of the fourth and the beginning of overtime, I guess maybe that's a bad example that they blew a lot of leads that year under Steve Spurrier. And maybe fans were just fed up, said, we're going to lose this game anyway. Let's get out of here. Because they were up like 2 scores with, anytime a team goes for an onside kick and doesn't get it, typically that means the game's over, right? That's what happened with Tennessee, but still somehow the Vols stuck around to win the game. So that's my experience at Williams-Brice. But it is one of the more underrated environments in college football.
For a half. Or at least until overtime.
Maybe I'm being too selective.
Okay. Well, I mean, listen, that's your experience. And it seems like some people on the Zone TV chat would agree with you. Let's get into some Titans football conversation. They have a home game on Saturday, tomorrow, as a matter of fact. I'm obviously going to be there. And there is one thing outside of the preseason game. We're going to go through individual players that I'm looking for basically progress reports on. You're going to hear some Greg Cosell analysis of some of the guys that I'm looking forward to. But I want to start with Ryan Tannehill and an observation that we have been having, Titans media collectively, about Ryan Tannehill, the difference between this year and last. We'll tell you what that means coming up next. I'm Buck Rising, 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Joint practices between the Titans and Buccaneers wrapped up yesterday. They will take the field for preseason game number 2 Saturday at Nissan Stadium. The League Company countdown to kickoff hits the air at 3, Titans countdown at 5, and it is a 6 p.m. kick between Titans and Bucks. 3 other preseason games going on tonight. Panthers are at the Patriots after what was a heated week of joint practice in New England. Neither Baker Mayfield nor Sam Darnold expected to play today. That's a 6 p.m. kick. Saints are at the Packers at 7, and it's Texans-Rams at 9. It is week 1 of the 2022 high school football season in Tennessee, and the 104.5 The Zone game of the week is at Gallatin High School as the Green Wave host Mount Juliet in a rivalry matchup. Will Bowling and I bringing you the coverage with a 6:45 pregame and a 7 p.m. kickoff right here on The Zone, followed by Friday night finals until 11. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour of the week for us anyway. Welcome in, welcome back. If you're just jumping in your car, we're happy to have you driving around on your lunch break, streaming on the Zone app or on Zone TV, whichever your preferred streaming preference. We are happy to have you as a part of the show. Jump in if you want, 615-737-1045. Let's make it real easy. What are you most looking forward to seeing when the Titans play at home on Saturday? Nissan Stadium, I don't necessarily expect a capacity crowd, but I do expect that there will be some interest by nature of it just being a Saturday night alone. That's the only reason where I would be cool with 3 preseason night games the way that they've got us working. But it's fine, because if the environment is good, if the vibes are, as the kids say, immaculate, it makes up for a lot. What are you most looking forward to seeing between the Titans and the Bucks in preseason game numero 2? 615-737-1045. We're going to get into that at some length because I've got a lot of co-sell analysis that I want to get to. But the place that I want to start with is on Ryan Tannehill. You guys have not yet seen Tannehill participate in any meaningful ways basically since the Bengals game. There have been some of you who have had the opportunity to go out and watch training camp practices who have a better vantage point than most on this. But for the most part, I think the vast majority of people, if you've seen anything of Ryan Tannehill this offseason, it's been via social media clips that don't obviously give you the full picture of what he did in a given day at practice. But I was watching him yesterday. And just out of curiosity, because we've been Rexroad texted this to our group text, our Titans media group text about, is there a clear and obvious difference between what you're watching with Ryan Tannehill this year versus last year, where he started out kind of rough and there was a handful of picks that were thrown early? And so this was, I don't know, probably 2 days ago, and I've been keeping it in the back of my mind, just kind of thinking, okay, do I notice anything different about him? Is there anything of consequence truly that makes me feel that Ryan Tannehill is in a better or theoretically worse position than he was in 2021? And so he goes 17 of 23 yesterday in 7-on-7, the 2 7-on-7 team, or rather 7-on-7 and team periods is the way that Jimmy Wyatt charted it. And Jimmy does a good job of keeping track of Tannehill's completions every day. Especially hot in the 7-on-7 red zone period. Hit 4 straight plays to 4 different targets. He threw touchdown passes. Westbrook-Akina, Traylon Burks, which was a really, really nice one. Austin Hooper and Dontrell Hilliard, who had a bit of a day himself. In the 2 days of work total, 38 of 52 in 7-on-7 and team periods combined. 15 total training camp practices that we're through right now. Tannehill is 163 of 234, 3 interceptions, and a bunch of touchdowns. So numerically, he looks fine. And I think that the offense in certain moments has looked clunky, but I think there should be some expectation to that, given that they're now working their way through second and third layer type of discussions and installation practices. You're going to have some players who hit speed bumps in ways that, they were moving a little freer before because it was less complex. And now as you start to stack and layer the workload and the playbook and things of that nature and try to build upon the initial weeks of progress, you start to see some things slow down for some people, or you start to see some things for some players that catch them up a little bit, make them have to think for a second longer, which of course can make a massive difference in any given NFL play. But when Mike Vrabel was asked about Tannehill this year and his just general observations of what his quarterback has been doing so far in training camp, I thought his response was of note.
I think that's all of us. I think that's between me, Ryan, the offensive staff, Todd. Just taking ownership of this thing and making sure that you give the quarterback an opportunity to correct him or tell him what he wants to tell him, and then Rob can fill in whatever blanks, or Todd can fill whatever blanks in with with Ryan.
So taking ownership is something that I've also, at least in press conferences, I've noticed Tannehill himself emphasizing more. And I think we've touched on this a couple of times. Going back to the Kyle Phillips, I think Kyle Phillips had a particularly exceptional day. At some point last week, he made a nice play on a 11-on-11 drill to come up with a touchdown in the end zone. And Tannehill kept emphasizing the idea of Kyle Phillips making a play for him, of Kyle Phillips making a play for Ryan Tannehill. He's out there. I can trust him, and I know that he's going to be there to make a play for me. It's good. It's a good way for me to build the trust. It's a good way for me to gain those good habits as far as he is concerned and our chemistry and connection together. And it gives me something in the back of my mind at any given point when he's on the field to know that, okay, I can go to him, and at some point he's probably going to get open, because he's just been consistently doing that. In the same way, we talked to Mike Keith kind of about this yesterday with Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper just consistently, even if he's not a game-breaking, physically overwhelming or speedy option as far as the tight end is concerned, like he just finds a way. He's just spatially aware. He understands how to get himself open in certain circumstances to the huge benefit of the quarterback. And if Tannehill needs to get something going, needs to get some momentum going, then he knows that Austin Hooper and Kyle Phillips are going to be two of these guys. And Robert Woods at this stage in his career, and based on his availability, certainly, that he knows he has at least three reliable options that he's got considerable reps with that he can trust and know are going to be there in certain spots. And when Tannehill was asked about the idea of creating these relationships with these individual players as he works with a whole new collection of skill position guys, I thought it was a pretty telling response.
Yeah, no doubt. Austin's done a great job for us. You mentioned we have several guys that are either new to this team or kind of roles stepping up on this team, and it's been a fun camp for me, just building those relationships, building that chemistry, having the conversations, day-to-day basis on what I'm expecting and how they're seeing certain things. So that chemistry just continues to build and to grow. And Austin did some really good things in that 2-minute. He's winning one-on-one matchups and making plays. So when a guy has shown to consistently do that, it builds a lot of confidence.
So that was Tannehill at the podium on Wednesday talking about Austin Hooper, and that was again the day that in the 2-minute he had hit Hooper for 3 straight completions to get the drive going and set up in a situational football drill what would have been the game-winning kick. So those are the kind of things that matter. But has it made Tannehill a substantially different quarterback? My response would be no. What I see from Tannehill is what I have generally associated with Ryan Tannehill's ability and skill set. If you give him those kind of options, he's going to be able to succeed. He can find ways to win. And if you give him guys that he trusts and knows are going to be available to him, not just one that because of overwhelming talent is going to help you win a game nearly single-handedly, the connection between the quarterback and the wide receiver, Tannehill and A.J. Brown, straight up won games. But in the absence of that kind of an option, Can you give him a variety of different ways to just make life a little easier? To kind of loosen the tie around his neck a little bit if he's in a 2-minute drill and he's got a certain circumstance where he just needs to get to the third down, stop the clock, and give him an option that's going to understand the field position and understand his place and know to have the presence of mind to either make the play, get open, and go down right away so they can spike it, or get out of bounds and stop the clock to help them set up their next play. Like this, it's just the kind of fundamental stuff that football coaches and players, their relationships are built on. That general trust that not only are you going to be out there, but we're basically going to know where each other is at any given point in the play, because we've been through this thing so many times and it's just second nature. It's muscle memory. And he didn't really have that last year. So if you're asking me if I think that he's a substantially different quarterback from year over year, the answer is no. But can he look better? Can he look more crisp? Can he look more efficient? Because you've made things around him far more stable. To this point, that answer is yes. So while Ryan Tannehill continues to get those kind of reps, let's talk about the quarterbacks and other players who are going to be earning their reps and their opportunities in Saturday's preseason game. Let's go through a progress report from Greg Cosell on Malik Willis and a couple of other Titans players that we need to see substantial gains from. That's next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Buck Rising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Preseason football. Doesn't matter. It's a home game. I like covering home games. Not just because I don't have to schlep to the airport, because you guys make it a lot of fun, especially in the last couple of years. The environment at Nissan Stadium has been markedly improved, and I for one, have been hugely grateful for that, because it beats covering a dead Week 3 Thursday night football game between the Titans and Jags that's, maybe 3/4 of the way full.
So you're talking just overall, not just preseason.
No, I just mean generally. In my lifetime of covering Titans games, it has gotten substantially. I enjoy doing my job now more because it doesn't suck to go to those games and look at a bunch of miserable people because their quarterback has some kind of ulnar nerve issue and can't feel his fingers, and he's throwing wobbling duck, interceptions to God knows what kind of safety, Texan safety or something like that.
But I bet the preseason environment will be better than usual tomorrow.
I would hope so. Again, Saturday night, Lower Broadway right there. Like, just go do your thing and then show up at the Titans game. Like, and you don't have to worry about work the next day for the vast majority of you. Oh.
Breaking sports news.
What happened?
On 104.5 The Zone.
Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian has officially named Quinn Ewers as the starting quarterback in Austin.
Oh, Hudson Card, what happened?
He has officially been moved from interesting to important in our impact transfer categories.
Oh, so stock up in real time.
Yes.
Look at that. Do you have your bell? Your little stock exchange bell?
Oh, where is it? Oh, it's expired.
The pressure's on. Oh, it's expired?
No, it's just the time expired.
Is it, what are you, like fruit? What do you mean it's expired?
I don't know what I did with the stuff. There's so many buttons on here.
Okay. I've never actually looked at that thing that's in front of me. Oh. Okay. That was not the payoff that I wanted. But we did our best. All right. So Quinn Ewers is the starting quarterback for the Longhorns this year.
Going with the higher upside.
Okay. Well, we will see how that pans out. He's a fascinating case study. Just given, he's just so young. It's just so young that he's already been in college football for a year and coming into a just pressure-packed situation like that, where if he performs poorly, it can derail a lot of the good that Arch has done, I think. If he does not succeed within the coaching structure that Sarkisian has, because it is fair to expect that there has been no recruit in the history of college football that has had more access to information from so many different places and parts of the college football and NFL world than Arch Manning. So you would have to assume that in doing their due diligence, the Mannings felt confident about Sarkisian's ability to develop quarterback play. So if Quinn Ewers looks wretched out there or just generally underwhelming, that is not a good sign, I think, for the forward momentum or progress that Texas kind of initially rode when Arch signed and committed there.
Yeah.
Because if that starts to feel askew, you're going to look around and be like, okay, well, this is the number one overall prospect from not that long ago, and this guy can't do anything with him.
Wouldn't be surprised if Arch redshirts next year.
I think it's a pretty good situation even if he does. I understand why college football players don't redshirt anymore necessarily. I get it. But if you are truly concerned about the long-term development of the player at the position, I just don't think it's a bad idea under the correct circumstance. Anyway, 615-737-1045. What are you most looking forward to in the preseason game between the Titans and the Bucs on Saturday? For me, I think the thing that I'm most excited about, honestly, is Roger McCreary, because I haven't seen Roger play in live NFL reps just yet. I've seen practice reps. I've seen reps against the Bucs, but he didn't play against the Ravens, and he's been one of my favorite players to watch at camp. Just the opportunity to see how much of a technical difference there is between McCreary and, say, Farley. Caleb Farley, for example, who had a really, really nice rebound day on Thursday after not playing up to his potential on Wednesday in joint work with Tampa Bay. But I think McCreary's probably the most exciting player, that just by nature of me not having seen him yet, and to hold it up as a sample size against Farley, because I gotta assume I don't think there's going to be any more starters that play in this game. Do you think they're not going to put Bayard out there in a preseason game?
No. I mean, they have a lot to figure out about their defensive backs, right? The moves they made this week are indicative of that.
You got to see what Lonnie Johnson can do Lonnie Johnson Jr. can do after you just signed him. You got to see how much Tyree Gillespie has picked up in the last couple of weeks, working in the back end as you try to figure out your depth behind Amani Hooker and Kevin Byard. Like, they have a lot of offensive line depth they need to figure out as well. Right tackle is the only right tackle, and I mean, if Brewer plays center again, but I can't imagine they'd even do that again. You know, is there really that much added value by putting Brewer out there for a couple of snaps at center? I don't think so. I don't. I have no earthly idea how they feel about it, other than this is the opportune time for you to see what you have with a bunch of other guys. So, you know, if I saw Caleb Farley out there and Dylan Radin / Nick Petit-Frere, and you called that at some point in the season, any of those three players a starter, then yeah, you're going to see that and Randy Bullock and Brett Kern in some form or fashion. But that is the thing that I think most intrigues me. As far as progress reports are concerned, I talked to Greg Cosell about a variety of players. And basically I teed Greg up for, okay, let's talk about Malik Willis from just the most basic elements of what we are trying to learn about him at this very moment. And I thought Greg's perspective on it was very nuanced and important.
I'm not defining his career with what he did the other night. He does have a long way to go. The Titans know that, by the way. But this is not this game against the Ravens is not a career-defining moment. You know, it might be. It's defining in the sense that they now have a lot they can work on. That's how it's defining. But it doesn't mean that this is what Malik Willis will be Saturday night, 6 months from now, 3 years from now. All we have is we're living in this moment. This is all we have, Buck.
It is all we have. All we have is the sample size of what he puts on tape during practices, what they go back and review with him after they conclude that day's work. And what he's done in the preseason game is kind of a larger sample size of, okay, if you were to be put in a situation, this is as close to the operations of what it would look like as any other thing that we can give you. And for Malik, that's something that we've talked about a great deal. Now, here's the thing. Here's the biggest difference in what's happened since last Thursday night in Baltimore. Malik gets a far larger percentage of the backup quarterback snaps this week than Logan Woodside has. And so we just asked Mike about the idea that Logan Woodside is now getting appreciably less work on the practice field. And Vrabel, I think, gave the answer that every Titans fan wanted to hear.
You know, I just think that we have to continue to develop Malik in this system. And we've had conversations with Logan about, you know, his opportunity to compete. But I also feel like, you know, we have to try to see, you know, how quickly we can bring Malik along. And I think that would be the reason why.
That's the only reason that you need. You have more investment in this guy. This guy is a bigger piece of the puzzle for the future of your franchise. And if you're not going to get an extended look at him in the regular season, and likely you're not unless something goes terribly, terribly wrong, Malik Willis has to take as many training camp and preseason reps as humanly possible. As many as they feel warrants giving him for him to be able to pick up as much of the concepts as he can. They know that Woodside knows the concepts. Woodside has been in the offense going into, I think, year 4. Woodside has it, and I know the, AAF, American Alliance of Football. Woodside at least has been in his professional career a starting quarterback to this point. Malik will have plenty of time to do so as well. The point is, if you put Logan Woodside in a game and he tries to push the ball down the field or he tries to do things that are out of character for Logan Woodside and he doesn't take care of it, it's going to look like it did in Baltimore. But you know that he knows the offense. Like, nobody's disputing that Logan Woodside doesn't know the offense. Nobody's disputing that Logan Woodside doesn't know their protections, doesn't know how to get them into certain plays and looks, doesn't know how to operate, basically. I've heard zero issues with that. And then when you see him throw a football and he clearly lacks the physical arm talent or athletic gifts of other quarterbacks, you're like, yeah, okay, that's what it is. It's just what it is. For Malik, it may. Here's the thing, okay? I think there is a scenario where we come out of that game on Saturday night and people are rioting because Malik has maybe thrown a couple interceptions, because Malik has looked uncertain or unsure in certain moments. There is a scenario where we come out of the game and if you looked at the box score, it would look terrible. And then there will be all kinds of grand assertions made about Malik Willis. Now, it could go that poorly, or it could well be a product of their trying to get him to do the things that he wasn't doing last week, and it's made him hold the ball for a second longer. Or he's made the wrong read and thrown an interception, but he got rid of the ball. Like these things that they are trying to coach him up on in certain ways, like it's cool if it looks mechanically bumpy. It's cool if it doesn't look smooth. And it can still be beneficial to that quarterback. Greg's analysis there, and there's a lot more that we went into that's available in the podcast. I know, Lucas, you said there was like 4 different answers that you had about specifically just Malik. But like I think the best advice you can give anybody about watching this dude right now is just like this is what we have. This is what they have to work off of. And there is zero pressure for him to play at any point, which is swell. Because he can learn from these mistakes, he can rep it out in practice, and he can look like a far more finished product by the end of the year in some form or fashion than he was in training camp in week 2 of the preseason. It's okay to just breathe. Now, there's a variety of different players that you saw take snaps in the preseason that are going to matter for the future viability of this team. Obviously, Malik Part 2 is a big part of this, but the offensive line is the thing I think that I have more questions than answers about. I feel that I know less about what I think about Dylan Radins today than I did heading into this offseason. And we played this audio for you yesterday, the breakdown of Greg Cosell on Dylan Radins specifically, because technically, there are still 2 offensive lining starting jobs on the offensive line up for grabs. Left guard, right tackle. Realistically, it's just the one at this point because we have not seen the kind of rotation with Aaron Brewer on the left side that we have with Radins and Petit Frere on the right side. And so when I heard Greg talk about Radins, as you'll hear now, it made me I feel like I'm more concrete on that spot than I have ever been. And I'll tell you why after you hear from Cosell.
Yeah, and again, it's what the tape shows. Mm-hmm. And Radins still has significant problems at the right tackle position in pass protection. He reaches, he lunges, and that causes balance and body control issues. I think it was on the first series where you saw that against the Ravens, where he reached and he lunged and he was beaten. Now, I don't think he was responsible for a sack or something of the sort, but I wasn't looking at that. I was looking at him. Mm-hmm. And he has really, really struggled with that. And as we speak today, Buck, he is not ready to be a starting right tackle. Whether that he gets better and better, I can't answer that. I'm sure the Titans can't answer that. They're working with him. That's what you do. But at this moment in time, you would not feel comfortable lining him up as your starting right tackle week 1.
And that's the biggest question, right? There's still time, but not less and less time every day as we get closer to the regular season.
And keep one thing in mind. Week 2, they play Von Miller.
Mm-hmm.
And, what that means is it's easy to say, oh, well, he can't handle Von Miller. Obviously, a lot of people can't handle Von Miller. But what that means is what is the result then for your offense? Because as we talked about with their third down offense a year ago, then that requires you to keep people in a back or a tight end to help with your right tackle. And then that limits the options in your pass game, particularly on third down. So it has a domino effect on the rest of your offense and the rest of your pass game. Now, I'm not saying Petit Frere, who I thought actually he played 28 snaps, and I thought he played well. And I thought it appeared that he took to coaching well because some of the concerns that clearly showed up at Ohio State did not show up in this game. I'm not there every day, so I don't know if they're showing up more regularly every day, but he tended to reach and lunge in college. It was very noticeable when he played Aiden Hutchinson. It was very noticeable when he played Arnold Ekubetti from Penn State. But it didn't show up in this first preseason game. But anyway, the point I'm making is even if he's the starter, he would need help too against Von Miller, because obviously Von Miller is one of the great pass rushers of the last 10 years, and Petit Frere would be a rookie right tackle. So he'd need help as well.
So basically, I don't feel good about either of them.
And that's week 2.
Yeah.
Von Miller.
Well, here's and I know why Greg used Vaughn, because Vaughn's a good example, but like Von Miller is in Buffalo for the playoffs. Von Miller, even as the deal is a long-term deal, like I don't think Von Miller is going to play like if Von Miller plays 50% of the snaps against the Titans, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I'm saying? But still, they have who's that just mountain of a human being from Miami that they drafted a couple of years ago. Greg Rousseau, pass
from
rusher,
Miami. That's
really nice player for them. Who in his first year I thought had a lot of promise. They revamped their defensive front. Like Buffalo is doing that with the intention of trying to beat teams like Kansas City and Russell Wilson and whomever else they may see in the AFC playoffs when these things start to come around that derailed them the first time. And they don't want to play in overtime against Patrick Mahomes anymore. They want to knock him around the way that the Titans do when they have played in recent years.
The way the Bucs did in the Super Bowl.
Exactly right. They have done in the same way that the Titans did, kind of double down on pass rush this year and giving Harold that contract. Buffalo has taken the same approach. So, honestly, I'd be shocked if you saw Ryan Tannehill drop back all that often in the first couple of weeks of the season, like pure drop back. They don't do a whole lot of that anyway, but still. They're going to avoid that as much as humanly possible for exactly that kind of thing, because their biggest limitation to me right now as we sit here today is that right tackle spot. I think as you're starting to identify weaknesses that may kind of carry over into the season, like that's the biggest glaring one to me. I don't know that there's one that's more prevalent. I mean, the wide receiver stuff I think continues to come up, but like I feel so good about Robert Woods and Kyle Phillips and Hooper that Burks, even limited availability would make me feel comfortable. I'm not comfortable at right tackle if I'm a Titans fan right now, because I'm looking at that and saying, well, not only is the guy in year 2 not ready, but the rookie has got some, has got a lot of work to do as well to be able to handle the kind of pass rushers that he's going to see, who understand that you don't just have to beat them athletically. You have to beat them with technique. And that, I think, is the biggest kind of emphasis for Nick Petit Frere at this point. I love when this argument comes up, because it comes up every year, and it comes up every week, it seems, that we talk about this, from Mark Jones. Radens will be the starter, and he will be solid. The O-line will be more consistent with the starters out there. Henry makes the offensive line's job and everyone's job easier. I would add to you that offensive line did not make his job easier last year, as he got tackled behind or at the line of scrimmage more than any other running back in football. So, worth noting. Mark Jones says Bosa had to switch sides when rushing because he couldn't get by Radens in his solo start last year versus the 49ers. And I present to you, because, again, this is turning into Mason Kinsey. It's starting to feel personal in the way that I have to provide people with actual facts about what they think they saw is not actually a thing that happened. And I don't think there's a better example of that in football last year than Dylan Radens against the San Francisco 49ers. Here are the individual numbers for Dylan Radens against the Niners. He did not play particularly well. I'm reading from Football Outsiders, the foremost preeminent forecasting of NFL teams that is available and out there on the market. There is it's the best version of a college football preview magazine, and it's all in one beautiful Bible. They don't pay me to do this. I just love this thing this much. Dylan Radens, in his one start against the San Francisco 49ers in Week 16, did not go particularly well. 4 blown blocks, a sack allowed, and a false start against the Niners. Not a good day. Do you remember talking about how much help with Greg Cosell? Remember talking about how much help they had to give on that left side of the offensive line, even with Lawan in certain circumstances as he worked through his recovery? You know why your third down passing game looked like such a bleep show? Because you were having to leave in tight ends, running backs, to help the left side of your offensive line, and at times the right, chip. You lose the numbers immediately. You lose the numbers battle on defense, and if you play as many third and longs as this team did last year because your running game on first and second down was not overwhelmingly efficient, you're banged. Like, you lose. And yes, by nature of a couple spectacular A.J. Brown plays, you won that game. To their credit. Dylan Radins played well enough, even as he did not play well, he played well enough for them to win. To his credit. I'm not out here trying to badmouth Dylan Radins. I'm just saying, if enough smart football people are telling you that this guy isn't ready yet, it doesn't mean that he can't be. But on August the 19th, as we sit here today talking about a starting right tackle job, that's not your boy. And not at this point anyway. Is it already the end of the show? Almost? Goodness. Okay. Polls are next. Final segment. We got a 9.8 score in the YouTube chat from Derek R. Thank you much. That's a strong performance on a Friday. He writes, based on the first 2 hours, I missed the last 45 minutes. If you did anything to lower your score today, you caught a break. Brilliant. I like gaming the system that way.
What did we do that would have lowered our score today?
That whole divin situation.
Dived.
I think
dive and dodge.
I think that's where we lost the point too. I think those were the first points taken off. Very good. Wrap it up here on a Friday and get you over to Blaine and Mickey. Don't worry, you're not done with me yet. I'll be on Blaine and Mickey in the first hour as well, and I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. By the way, Blaine, Mickey, Robert Walsh, and myself are going to do pregame coverage now. Instead of me for an hour before they do their thing, I'm going to be with them, and that's going to be great because I love working with those guys. So Saturday at 3, I think, is when we start for Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff, and we'll be doing that 3 hours before every Titans game, even when I'm on the road, which we got to figure out what that looks like exactly, but I suppose we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Anyway, what else do we have to do? Oh, Smoky Grays. The Smoky Gray uniforms are back. This is a hot topic on Vol Twitter because a lot of you love them. A lot of you don't like their record in them. And there is a strong contingent of Tennessee fans that I assume are not on social media or just generally don't care what children think about the uniform combinations that say you should never deviate from the orange and white. Like never, ever deviate. You don't need matte black. You don't need Smoky Gray. You don't need... what did they do last year? Did they wear black helmets last year at some point?
Yeah, the dark mode.
Dark mode.
Although the helmets were white. Yeah, I think they kept the helmets white.
But I think they're doing the black helmets this year, right?
They do the gray helmets, yes.
Everybody at some point, whether it's professional or pro at this point, or professional or college at this point, has a black, dark mode uniform.
Yeah, it's like the helmets were white with a black outline on the power tee.
Yeah, Nike just keeps making money off of Stopes who continue to buy different jersey iterations. Your position on the Smoky Grays is what?
Used to be just now keep it orange and white, but that was a Butch Jones thing because I just associated the Smoky Grays with
very
Butch.
Old of you.
It's a very gimmicky thing. Yeah, but my position is now that wear what will get you recruits.
Wait, so you want them to go full Oregon? Just give me as many different.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, the larger the variety, the more risk you run of just being like, what the hell are they wearing?
Right.
I don't know how Oregon did that for the longest. That was like, they don't still do that, right?
I don't know. I don't know what their variation is anymore.
They must. It's telling how little Oregon and football I've watched since probably Justin Herbert was there. But I mean, I feel like once Mario Cristobal became the coach, like I didn't see like a different Oregon uniform every other week the way that or Willie Taggart. But Willie Taggart wasn't doing it. Willie Taggart was the coach at Oregon for a hot second.
Yep, now at FAU.
Yes, no longer at FSU, where he was in between. Okay, let's do some polls.
All right, Dan. I reckon I'll talk about a poll update. This is Carl Childers. There's a young feller. I think he's got the final numbers. Here's the producer of the Buck Rising show. A feller named Lucas Panzeker. Got any mustard and biscuits?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford. You can custom order any new Ford from Two Rivers. They'll deliver it right to you, right to your door, as soon as it's manufactured. All right, Tennessee fans, which alternate uniforms do you prefer? 59% like the Smoky Gray over the dark mode.
59%?
Smoky Gray.
Okay. I agree with that. Like, I'm good with some variance. That's probably not the word that I should use. I'm good with some variation when it comes to the uniforms. I like the traditional stuff too, but if you can get cute without getting too cute, I think that's kind of what the Smoky Grays are.
Yeah, Sam says dark mode looks better in person. Both of them should only be worn at night, which I think I support that.
I agree.
I think a healthy balance of keeping the tradition while sprinkling in the Smoky Gray type uniforms to help recruiting is good. Dawson says both, but I want the helmets with the TriStar on them. Those helmets do not exist.
So, didn't they end the Florida losing streak back in like 2016 in the Smoky Grays?
Yes, it was a big 21-point comeback in the second half in 2016. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a little good juju around the Smoky Grays. It's not all bad.
Yeah, most of it's bad. But I'm not a superstitious person. I don't think past results.
Yeah, but you know though, you're aware. Like you can't say that you're not a superstitious person and then be like, yeah, most of it's bad.
What one thing do you need to see from Malik Willis Saturday against Tampa? Goody says, stand in the pocket and throw the ball.
That's improved pocket presence and basically just are his feet keeping up with his eyes basically when he throws? Because that's a really hard thing to do and a difficult habit to kind of master in a week. I don't expect him to look overwhelmingly improved or better at it. And in fact, I expect it to look a little sloppier for him if they're asking him to do things that he's not overwhelmingly comfortable with.
Chris Johnson says pocket awareness, getting through multiple reads, less scrambling, give the receivers a chance. That's the other thing. Like, give the receivers a chance to prove themselves, the ones that are trying to make the team.
I would be so pissed if I was Des Fitzpatrick. I'd just be mother bleeping this dude under my breath after every snap where I'm running wide open on the crossing route that they run for everybody, for Corey Davis, for A.J. Brown. Bread and butter, bang play action, crosser over the middle. You hit him for a 25-yard gain and whatever you can get after the catch. Like, I would be pissed.
Jonathan wants to see interceptions. Want to see him throw more than one pick because I want to see him throwing over the middle and not being deterred by tight windows, also bouncing back from a pick and keeping the confidence.
I agree. Like I said, if it looks rough, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Will we know who the Titans' starting right tackle is after this preseason game against the Bucs? 69% nice, say no.
I think I already do, but I don't think it's a good thing.
How much stock do you put into positive Tannehill training camp reports? 58% say a little, 21% say a lot, 21% say none.
That's a fairly even distribution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's notable because what's around him, not necessarily because of him. But that's never been a question for me. I think it's a question for a lot of people after you have the result that you do, and it kind of shakes everything that you've known consistently for whatever it is, 2 seasons before, and not had that thought put in your mind. And then when you see that, it completely affects everything that you do, unfortunately, for the assessment process of it. But yeah, I think he looks okay.
Which college football transfer are you most excited to watch this season? David says Brew McCoy if at USC Mike Bone, the AD at Southern Cal, will quit playing games and give the okay for him to play this season.
Even if they do, I don't think the Brew McCoy, based, positive training camp reports on Tannehill, how much you take out of that, just the stuff that I read about Brew McCoy, it doesn't seem like people around it seem like he is at that point.
Have you read, so you said Swain had kind of talked about that a little bit, because I've only read positive things about Brew McCoy, especially lately as he's gotten more adjusted and gotten more in shape.
I was on GoVols 24/7. I don't remember if it was Callahan or somebody else that wrote that had the article, but it was just basically like, yeah, he's a really, really good athlete that hasn't played a lot of football here recently, and he's got to be a better football player.
David says he's excited to see Bo Nix and Travis Dye at Oregon. Dye, the running back transfer from USC. Nix, of course, the quarterback from Auburn. Well, I don't even know if he's going to win that job.
I don't want to watch any more Bo Nix. I've seen plenty of Bo Nix.
Oh, they're playing Georgia week 1.
Hard pass.
Jesus says Spencer Rattler. Owen also says Bo Nix. And Flannel Fred says all the guys at Southern Cal.
There's a lot of them. He's not wrong. There's a lot of different players playing at USC this year.
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. Be back at it tomorrow, 3 p.m., live from Nissan Stadium. We'll have the stage and our setup. Kirby Allen Kirby, Robert Walsh, Blaine Bishop, Mickey Ryan. We'll be hanging out there before the game. Come say hi while you tailgate and then on your way into the game, because we will be there as well. Primetime Sunday night radio show, Monday morning at 10 a.m. We'll have a lot to talk about. See you guys.